Good morning, everyone. I see that we've got quite a few folks hopping online right now. It's about 2 minutes to the top of the hour, and my name is Christine Brown. I am the Director of Member Engagement for the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce. I just want to welcome all of you here today. Just to give you a little bit of the format of this call, a little bit of insight. We've been doing these Ask the Expert calls for a couple of weeks now, and typically the format of these calls is pretty much all Q&A. A combination of questions that are received by our members ahead of time and questions that that I've come up with or that one of our staff has come up with, and then also some live questions that come in from participants in the call via chat. But today's going to be a little different. Today we have Devin Sizemore with us. Devin, I see that you're on the line. It's good to see you. Good morning. Devin is actually going to share a brief presentation for us about leveraging the current opportunity that the COVID-19 crisis presents to us as businesses, and how to do so respectfully, in a way that's not tone deaf, in a way that is responsible. And so we're really grateful to have Devin and his expertise with us today. So what we'll do is we will go ahead and start with his presentation when we get going. And if at any point during that presentation you have a question, go ahead and enter it into the chat function on Zoom, and we will do our best with whatever time we have left to answer whatever questions that come in. Just a couple notes. We do have a hard 30-minute limit on these calls, not just to keep your day moving, but because functionally speaking, Zoom won't allow us to go longer than that. So that's the name of the game. So we're going to go ahead and we've still got people coming in. We'll go ahead and get started in about 30 seconds. All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started now. Just a couple of housekeeping reminders before we get going. Please, if you are not one of our speakers today, go ahead and mute yourselves out of courtesy and respect to everybody on the call. We appreciate that. And also, if you have any questions at any point during this talk, during the presentation, please go ahead and use the chat function instead of unmuting yourself. We would really appreciate that as well. So without further ado, we're going to get started. Again, my name is Christine Brown. I am the Director of Member Engagement here at the Reno Sparks Chamber. And I am so pleased to have Devin Sizemore with us. He is with BBSI, which is one of the Chamber's valued partners. We appreciate him and all of the support that he has shown for our mission here at the Chamber, especially during this time as we're navigating the COVID-19 crisis and beyond, and looking to help our economy recover. So without further ado, Devin, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's wonderful to be able to share whatever we can to help businesses navigate the current situation. I know it's uncertain and unpredictable. So my goal today is to provide some tools that we use with clients that can help you look at your business or organization and kind of gauge where you're at, gauge where you're heading, and then create a plan that makes sense for you as things ramp back up. All understanding that there's a lot of uncertainty around a lot of it, and there's some things we can't control, but there are a lot of decisions and things you can't control. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if this pops up here.
Looks good.
All right, perfect. So I'll just give you guys a quick background. I know I don't want to listen to a speaker if I don't know who they are, so I don't want to spend too long here, but just set the stage. So at BBSI, we provide a variety of resources, payroll, HR, risk, and business consulting. Today's goal is more on the business consulting side. We serve 6,500 clients nationally, and we have 110 local teams. So again, don't want to spend too long. Just want you to know we're out there for you, and we're serving a lot of small businesses. This is the statistic that drives a lot of my conversation. 70% of businesses fail before their 10th anniversary. I think that's unacceptable, and I know the chamber thinks that's unacceptable, and we want to have an impact to help businesses have a better chance of succeeding. So these are the tools that we talk about and we use. Again, as I go through the tools, I'm not going to dig super deep. So I'm going to give you the tool, give you some basis for it, explain how it might apply. And then if you have questions, happy to connect after, happy to provide more resources. And then I can send you the PowerPoint as well. So the first question is, and this is something that, we're probably asking ourselves a lot now, is do you have a tool or mechanism to stress your business? Do you have a way that you look at your business and understand what's broken, what's going to break, and when it's going to break? Often with this, the answer is cash flow, or I run out of space or capacity. It's very simple. There's not really a tool that I've heard people come back with. So that's the first question I want to ask, and something you should ask yourself. How do you stress your business? How do you test it? So tool number one that I wanted to present to you guys and kind of give you some insight into, we call it the 3X and 6-pillar conversation. The concept of 3X is looking out at a growth rate in your business where things start to break. If I were to ask you right now for your business or organization, hey, if you doubled, could you see what that looks like? Could you understand, your people, your processes, your finances? That makes sense. Typically at 2X, most business owners, organization owners can go, yeah, it makes sense. Maybe it's a little bit blurry. At 3X is typically when things start to get a little crazy, because you probably have to add management. Maybe you have to add some other levels. Your cash flow is probably stressed. Something's probably broken at 3X. I'm not saying you need to triple your business. And definitely during this time, I understand that even growth may be a challenge. So the point of this tool is, how far out can you look to where it gets blurry, and then start working your way back to where you have perfect clarity in what your business looks like. That's where we can start building real plans and understand, hey, what's good today might not be good in the future, and how do we break that now in a controlled environment so we can create a plan. So that's the first kind of part of the tool. The second part is applying that concept to the 6 pillars of business. So people, process, product, the 6, and then looking at which of those 6 is most important to you. So right now, finance might be number 1, right? You might be looking at cash flow, and maybe you didn't get the PPP loan and you're like, I don't know what to do. Okay, great. So today's urgency is that. But if we take that out of the way and we just talk business in general, which of those is going to break in the future is probably not the one that's broken today. So that's the first tool. Again, there's a lot of ways to tackle this, and we can get really deep, but I just want to give you the tools. You can grab the thing that makes sense to you, and then you can dig in and try to apply it to your business and your situation. So 3X, look at when things are going to break, pull it back to clarity, and then figure out which of the 6 pillars might be the one that's broken and that you need to put some attention to. The next tool, we call it the inflection curves. I like to call them honesty curves, because it's where you get real with your business. This tool is a little bit hard to understand, so I present it in 2 ways so you can grab the one that makes sense for you. The first way is the 1, 2, 3, 4 ranking system is using just the words, right? So 1 is that euphoric moment of starting. So typically you've changed something and you see limitless possibilities, challenges don't really exist, right? That could be a new process where you're like, this is awesome. Or you just brought someone on the team and all you know about them is they're a great hire because they started today, right? As time goes on, what you'll typically find is you settle into the building phase where it's steady and you're seeing some challenges, right? That can apply to all the pillars, right? But steady. 3 is a plateau. During a recession or a challenging time, the plateau might be the perfect stage to live in, because it means that you're okay, right? Things are struggling and they're there, but you're not going the wrong direction. And then 4 is typically that broken phase where something needs to change now or it's only going to get worse. If you look at the curve on the right, it can be used as trajectories too. So you can draw those arrows up, and that kind of shows you what that growth pattern's like. This tool came out of a national conference that was run 10 years ago. And the concept is, if your business is at a 2.5 across the board, you're living in a perfect state, because that's really maintainable and doable. And most businesses don't exist there, right? There's always some piece of the business that's struggling. So to apply this tool, I recommend that you just think about your business as a whole and go, where do you think my business lands? Right now, it's in that limitless possibility stage. I feel like I'm building. Maybe I have hit a plateau in the business, or you know what, to be honest, this current environment, it's broken something, and I have to focus on that and make it work. We also recommend you use this tool every 90 days. So every 90 days, you should use this to reevaluate your business and figure out where you're at. And furthermore, if you have management team or key stakeholders in your company, I highly recommend having them do this separately and then coming back and having dialogue around what your guys' rankings are. Because that's going to create real conversation that usually is not emotional. It's based on fact, and it's based on the way you perceive that part of your business. So tool 2, inflection and honesty curves for your whole business. Tool 3 is taking those exact same curves with the exact same rankings we just talked about and applying it to the 6 pillars, right? So people, process, product, pipeline, finance, structure. What's that look like? Structure is the one that may not be super clear. That's the physical structure in your business. So management flow, who reports to who, where do things go? So take all 6 of those pillars of your business and rank them. Where do you think you stand? People is phenomenal, right? Or maybe people's not. Maybe you're at capacity because you have people furloughed or you had to lay people off. Okay, great. So being real, people might be a 4 right now. So now you have to start figuring out, well, how do you adjust your process or product to make that not such a struggle, right? So all of these are dynamic. And as you see one break, typically it's going to impact another of the 6 pillars. So that's why we like to do all 6, because it gives us insight into where are we at today and where are we going. So another way to use that, the next tool, and again, going fast through them, just want you guys to have them. I want you to see them. I want you to grab the one that works. So this tool is the one that we're having the most conversations on with our HR directors and that I'm personally talking to clients most about. It's the ABC player conversation. Another tool we recommend you use every 90 days, and you should definitely be using it right now, because if you're furloughing, laying back, or trying to figure out who to bring back when and how, this should be how you do it. So the ABC, A is your key player who, when you go on vacation and come back, the business looks better than when you left. Typically, that's the person who has that ownership mentality, right? You can trust them to make really good decisions, and maybe even decisions that are better than you. You've hired up, right? That's all of our goals. We want to hire people who are pushing us to the next level. Those are your A players. Your B players, we call it the workhorses, right? They're the ones out there that are getting it done. They clock in, clock out, very little problem, but they're usually not pushing above that. And then your C players are the ones that when you go on vacation, they follow you out the door. They get back 5 minutes before you, and then they tell you how amazing they were when you were gone. It's typically that telling you how amazing they were part that brings clarity to the fact that they're a C player. On the buckets, we use those as buckets of water, right? So in business, we call that revenue, call it whatever you want. We're filling that bucket up. If you have an A player, it's like being at the top of the bucket. They're keeping it full. You're probably not losing a lot of water. If you have a B player, it's like putting a hole in the middle of the bucket, right? Because they're just doing work, and you know that if you're not progressing, adapting, and changing, things are probably going to break. And then a C player is like putting a hole in the bottom of the bucket. You can put it in the bottom or the bottom side, and the water's going to flow out, and you're going to have to put a lot more effort in to keep it running. Now, the question that always comes after this is, can we change a C player? The answer is yes and no, right? So with C players, if their character traits make them a C player, so the way they show up, the way that they have ownership inside of your company, how they act, their character traits don't align with your culture, they're probably a C player, and it's probably best to move them out because they're probably messing your culture up as a whole, right? Now, they could be a C player because you put them in the wrong role, but they show up well, right? Their character traits are perfect for your culture, but you have put them in a position where the bulk of their work doesn't align with who they are as a person and the kind of work they want to do. The other side of this is if you 3X it, right? If you grow your business, A players can become B players. They could even become C players because as you apply pressure, time, stress, you can start breaking people, right? So it's key that in this time of influx, whether you're scaling down, scaling up, and adjusting, you're very aware of going into this scenario, where is your team? So maybe think back a little bit and create a ranking. Think about how people are acting now. Have people shown up different? Are they showing up different? Are you getting a different response? And then as you start putting the pieces back together, let's make sure that we're putting it back together in a way that we're leveraging those A players. we're supporting our B players, and we're using this time to furlough and lay off to maybe have a real reason to not bring the C player back. It's a good excuse, and maybe it helps you come out ahead of things. So ABC player tool. The last tool I want to show you guys is the Where Are You Living visibility tool. This is one that you probably, if you get honest with yourself, you know exactly where you were when things hit, and you probably know where you're living now because it's forced you to live in a certain position. So typically we call it the doing, the coaching, the mentoring, and the owning. We usually apply this to a football analogy, so I'll give it to you guys real quick so it makes sense. Typically in the doing phase, that's your worker bees, right? Or it could just be you doing physical work in the business, getting things done. On the football field, that's your quarterback, because that's your first level of leadership. Typically down there, their goal is first downs, low visibility, really fast game, right? It's very fast paced. As you move up a level to the coaching world, they're on the sidelines, more visibility, game's a little bit slower. They're trying to score touchdowns. They're trying to win a game, right? If you go up one more level, you've got your coordinators. They're sitting in boxes. They have visibility to the whole stadium. They're really thinking about the game, but they're thinking a little bit more about the season, and they can see the other team, so a lot more visibility. And maybe they're trying to figure out, hey, who on the other team am I going to take, or am I going to try to recruit next year? And if you move up one level above that, you have your owners, right? They're sitting in the owner's box. And to be honest, winning the game's great, but they're trying to create a legacy. And if we apply that to small business, we know that there's times when being an owner is super beneficial. And during this time, if you've had to make tough decisions, it's forced you into that ownership level. You're probably finding that as you let staff go or you're adjusting, you're having to dive back in because you're taking more on, and you're doing, or you're coaching, or you're mentoring your managers. So you're finding yourself in a different role. So I recommend that if you catch yourself spinning your wheels, you just kind of take this tool out and go, where am I? Where am I spending my time, and why? And how do I reset? And maybe it's just good to understand that where I'm spending my time is where I have to. So again, another tool for you guys to use. Those are the 4. So now we kind of take the questions that I really want you guys. I know it can be a stressful time. We're lacking a little bit of guidance and clarity on how reopening looks. And I get that. But again, let's focus on what we can control and how we can approach our business to make good decisions. So things I recommend you look at: first, how is this going to impact 3 things: your industry, your competition, and your clients? On the industry side, you should really be looking at your industry. Are things changing permanently? Are you seeing vendors flow differently? Really interesting statistic: the National Association of PEOs came out and said that 33% of professional employer organizations, which is where we fall, are going to go out of business during the COVID situation. That's a really interesting statistic to me, because it means there's going to be a hole, right? There's something there that's going to need to be fulfilled by all of the awesome providers that can do that service, right? So in your industry, what's happening? If you look at competition, are your competitors adjusting in a way that you're not? Are they struggling and going to go out of business? Is there an opportunity to partner, maybe support them and or buy them? How do you look at that? And then clients, how is your client acting? Do you expect your client to have the same character traits they had before as they do after? It's not likely. So what's changing and how? And let's make sure you're adapting for that and creating a plan on what that looks like. Next, how do you leverage time? You should be looking at this time to streamline. You should be looking at this time to cut overhead. And you definitely should go back to the ABC player conversation and be looking at staff. Right now is a great time to re-lever your staff. A lot of people are unemployed, so it's also a great time to try to figure out if you can pick up someone who could be a really big benefit to your business. Last recommendation there is go wide. If you're not using this time to expand your network, expand your connections, expand your client base, provide value-added services, drive free services, do anything you can to be a valuable asset during this time, you're probably missing the mark. And I highly recommend you find a way to become visible and valuable now. Whatever that looks like for you in your industry, let's make sure we're having a positive impact, because on the backside, people are going to remember that. And I know we were having this conversation about the chamber, right? That's what we're all trying to do, is how do we have a positive impact? So on the back end, people remember who we are, what we're trying to do in the community. So those are some of my tips. How can you use all of the above to kind of figure out where you're at, where you're going, and really leverage this time to not be down, although yes, it's hard, but let's make it a strategic move so that we come out ahead. last tip here, just stay connected. I have to say it because we've had these conversations and I know some of you are bummed out about the PPP and all those things. You know, talk to your advisors often, frequently, and use this time to build those relationships. And with that, that was my fast-paced tool business advice. And I'll open it up for Q&A.
All right, Devin, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, I know it was, for lack of a better way to put it, of course, like drinking from a fire hose, a lot of wisdom coming at us in a very short period of time. Thank you so much for packing so much value into such a short presentation. I think to me, it's really clear. And I think what resonated the most through your presentation was that this time, to make it the most valuable as we can for our businesses, it needs to be a time of honest assessment. And honestly, that's true in any time period of business we're facing, but it's especially true right now. I'm curious if you could share any kind of red flags or even health markers that businesses can be looking for as they're self-assessing.
Yeah, it's a great question. That's why I recommend the 6 pillars, because I think if you focus on your business as a whole, you're probably not being honest enough. And we find that if you dive into the 6 pillars, it usually will bring clarity to one of them that stands out as a problem. The other best advice is bring someone else in to have the conversation. So if you're a solopreneur, bring your spouse in. If you have a business partner, bring them in. If you have key management, bring them in. You need to have dialogue around these things, because that's what's going to bring light to the thing that you're not being honest about, right? At first glance, we're always going to rank ourselves better because that's what we want to do. You need someone to ask the tough questions and say, okay, great. So you're telling me people's okay, but you just laid off 9 people. So I'm really confused because I don't understand how people can be okay if you just got rid of people, right? So let's have real dialogue. So I think that's the key, is make sure you have a second set of eyes or a conversation person that can bounce off all of those things and really kind of keep you honest. And that's going to trigger the 1 or 2 things that should stand out for you.
Awesome. I think another thing our businesses are likely struggling with, and also I want to re-invite everyone, if you have any questions for Devin, go ahead and put them in chat and we will go ahead and get those answered for you in the next couple of minutes that we have. But one of the things that I imagine our businesses perhaps are struggling with is how to prioritize what to do next. What kind of guidance could you offer when it comes to setting your priorities of what to do first, what to make our first priority as you're navigating through this crisis, and how to know when to take next steps?
Yeah, great question again. And this has actually been the first question on every webinar I've done in the last 2 weeks. So
Right.
it's so hard to stay focused when the world is throwing so much at you right now. I mean, if you've tried to stay up on any of the regulations, they change every 4 seconds. So it's really hard to focus on that. I have 2 ways to answer the question that we're trying to advocate for our clients right now. First, you have to have your big 3 and little 3 every day. This is a trick I was taught a decade ago, and I think it applies really well. What are the big 3 things you have to get done today that are going to move your business forward? And what are the little 3 things that you keep pushing down the list that you need to get done, right? Those are those things, we call them like those tier 2, tier 3 things that are on the list, but you just kind of keep moving them. So first, make sure that when you start your day, you have clarity on what are the big 3 things I have to get done. These are the non-negotiables. No matter what hits me today, I have to make time for it. And on the other side, what are those 3 little things I'm going to check off? The other way to answer the question is, what's your goal? What are you chasing right now? I know the PPP can be a big distraction and cash flow is important, but at the same time, what are you chasing? Are you chasing streamlining? Are you chasing effectiveness? Do you still have that line cast far enough out that you understand where you're going? So the other part of the question is get very real with what the future is and where you're going, and make sure that the actions and priority today match that, and don't let today just create chaos.
Right, absolutely. And I think, as businesses are looking at what to do, one of the challenges they're having as they're prioritizing is confronting the fact that they have to get creative, that some of the things that worked even as recently as 6 weeks ago may not work now and may not even work in this process as we're reopening the economy. Do you have any advice for businesses to cultivate a more creative environment for themselves, but also for their businesses and their employees, for them to get creatively thinking?
Yeah, definitely. Again, I'll answer this one in two ways. It's another really good question. So first, if you don't have a mastermind group within your industry, I highly recommend that you do, right? So I don't like to think of competition as competition. I like to think of competition as partners in awareness. We're all out there trying to drive the same value, the same message, and provide the same resources. And I think it's such a healthier way to look at the industry. I love connecting with people in the industry and understanding what they're doing and what their perspective is. If you're going to build that group, it's really good if you can build that group in a way that it allows for honest conversation. So if you're going to do that, connect with people in your industry and other markets so you guys aren't competing with each other directly, but you can be honest about the creativity and what you're trying to accomplish. Highly recommend that. The second is you have to have your circle of people that you can lean into, right? That's going to drive that creativity. So in the Reno market, actually a couple people on the call, it's super great to see you guys here. You know, they're people I lean into and go, hey, here's my idea, yes or no. And you just have to be honest, right? Like, this is what I'm trying to do. Does it make sense? And that's a great way to bubble up ideas. And all in 80% of business is the same, right? 20% is unique to your industry or your situation. So that 80% you can steal from people, right? If they're doing something cool and awesome, let's see it. Let's take that and let's make it make sense. So that's my kind of big advice in that space.
Awesome. Those are great recommendations. And I think, you know, to add one thing that often comes to my mind, especially right now for businesses, as we're trying new things, as we're figuring things out, one of the things that's been a guiding principle for me in my creative process is allowing my critics to be my coaches. That as we're receiving criticism in this time for things that are working, for things we're trying that maybe aren't working very well, that sometimes we can take criticism we're receiving and there's a nugget of truth to it that we can use to adapt what we're doing or to reframe or hone in what we're doing to make it more successful. And so I think your recommendations are spot on. And we actually have a great question that came in, well, two great questions that came in chat. One is, which I think you already mentioned, about your PowerPoint being available to folks. I think you said you graciously allow that to be available. So we'll perhaps, if you're okay with it, Devin, send it out to our members in a briefing on Monday, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Sounds great. And then the next question, how do you recommend networking in this environment? We know a lot of our businesses rely on networking. It's a lifeblood for them. So what would you recommend to keep those connections viable and strong during this time?
Yeah, networking it's such an interesting conversation. I'm actually find it, I don't want to say easier to network now, but there are ways that it is easier because some people do have time. And when you eliminate drive time and you're doing calls and web conferences, you can stack more meetings into a day, which is a blessing and a curse, right? For those of you who are doing it. So first, I would say if you haven't touched base with your clients, your partners, your vendors already, you should. That's the easy list. But if you're going to do that, make sure you have a goal on who you're trying to connect with. So 98% of my business comes from referrals. So I want to talk to people that are going to be good referral partners. And I just want to connect with people and build networks. So my advice there is just ask, right? Reach out to the people you know and just say, hey, can you connect me with someone that you know, like, and trust, and or ask for something specific, right? Do you know an insurance agent? Do you know a CPA? I want to build my network here. And I'm just trying to have good conversations. As long as you're authentic about the conversation and that you're just trying to connect and you're not trying to throw this sales aspect into it, I think you're going to have an okay time booking those meetings. And I'm happy to connect you with anyone in my network that I know, because I think the more connections we can drive right now, the better, because we need more resources during this time. So just ask, be honest about it. And then, now's not the time to sell. Now's the time to just drive value and build great relationships.
Agreed. And I know, Devin, you've heard me say this, but I really believe that this next season of business, regardless of what kind of business, size of business you have, our success is marked by generosity. That to be generous means to be successful. That if we're sharing, if we're partnering together, if we are doing what we can to make one another strong, that's going to be what makes all of us stronger and what's going to drive recovery as we look toward that. So I think that's absolutely spot on. I know we're running out of time very quickly, but I think as a fine, I hate to leave it on kind of a downer note, but I think, I know that you don't have a crystal ball, none of us do, but if you were to identify some of the pitfalls that our businesses could be facing as they're coming out of COVID, what would you say those key pitfalls could be as we move forward?
Yeah, again, another really good question. And, there is no crystal ball. I do have insight in that we have branches in, we have 70 branches in a lot of different states. So we can see what different markets are doing and how they're opening up. My first concern is be aware of what ramping up looks like and be ready for it, because we can't predict how the consumer is going to act, but we need to be ready for them to act slow and fast. I think certain industries are going to get hit hard and fast, and you may not be ready for it. A great example of that is just inventory, right? Do you have enough inventory on hand to fulfill and deliver? Do you have enough conversations with your manufacturers to deliver stuff? If you don't, that's going to be a backlog. The other side of it is we're going to have some safety things that are going to be required, right? You may have to have a thermometer. You're probably going to need masks and gloves. You're going to have certain things, which if you haven't ordered now, in Nevada, right, at least we have 2 weeks, if you want to look at it as a positive, you have 2 weeks to start stockpiling. So I would recommend, although we don't have clear guidelines, it's probably going to be understood that you're going to need to have safety measures in place. And there's a backlog on all of that. So start getting it now, because if you wait to the day you're trying to open, you're not going to get it. It's just not, it doesn't exist. So I think now is a really good time to sit down and figure out what's the best case scenario moving forward and am I ready? And what's the worst case scenario moving forward and am I ready? And I think you need to be ready on both sides of that. So that's kind of the way I recommend it. I highly recommend that the thermometer, face mask, gloves situation though, because there's going to be health and safety things you're going to have to put in place. So start getting it now, because I don't want you to struggle to open because you don't have it.
Right, absolutely. I think you're right. The name of the game right now, especially as things remain somewhat uncertain, is to be creative, to be flexible, and to be nimble. And those are really some keys to success always, but especially as we're navigating this historically unprecedented time to be in business. And I know, Governor Sisolak yesterday announced, what the phases and what the road to recovery would look like. And we're really pleased that he adopted a good amount of the measures that we recommended as our curbside commerce program. Those are available. If you look at the Chamber's social platforms this morning on Facebook and Twitter, you'll see those guidelines for curbside commerce. And we're really grateful that our businesses, especially, the 65% of Chamber businesses that are small businesses and will rely on curbside commerce, will have the opportunity to do so. But I think, Devin, your recommendation is right on, to be as preparatory as you can right now, to get all of the PPE you can right now, not to be hoarding and selfish, but to have a clear-eyed view of what you and your business need and what you will need, at least for a couple of weeks, at least for a month to survive, and continuing to make sure your policies are written, accessible, visible to your employees and to yourself, that people, when they're coming to work, they know exactly what's expected and what's going to be protecting them. That's absolutely key. So we are just about out of time. And I want to say again, Devin, I appreciate your time and for offering yourself as a resource to our members. We really appreciate it. Thank you all. I know it's Friday and everyone's got their mind on the weekend, if they can remember what day it is, that is. But I thank you for joining us on this Friday. And I hope everyone has a great day. And again, we will make sure to send out Devin's resources to everyone in our Monday briefing. So keep your eyes open for that.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, and glad I could share some wisdom with you guys, and happy to connect.
All right. Thank you so much again, everyone. Have a good weekend.